Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video here. So I wanted to talk about the Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live trailer, and I actually really wanted to focus on Rick Grimes and what seems to be actually happening to the character here in this show. At this point, I will say I am under the belief that it is going to happen. I don't really see any other way where it could really change at this point. Like, I just feel like based off of the footage that we got, it practically confirms it, because there's one specific shot that in previous trailers, they were very much hiding. Like, they were actually zooming in more on Rick's face, and with the recent trailer that we got yesterday, it's actually zoomed out and you can tell like Rick is missing his hand. So I do want to talk about all of that. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this, especially with The Ones Who Live. There's going to be reviews for every single episode. There's going to be videos every day. There's going to be Q&As and everything like that. There's going to be so much to talk about with this show. Now, I've been focusing on this a lot today. I've just been like, you know what, like in terms of breaking down this trailer, there's still some stuff I wanted to talk about in the previous one, but I was not getting around to doing videos every single day. So I just, again, that's why I'm focusing on that right now, because like if I don't do videos every single day, a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas that I wanted to do are just going to completely really not matter at all, because there's going to be new footage like this that comes out and there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So I really wanted to get into this here because it just seems like, you know, at this point here, and we'll talk about how people, I guess, feel about it, because that's also one thing that I've seen. I've seen a reaction to this that I thought, well, at first anyways, I thought people would be okay with it, but it seems like people, or it's very, very mixed. A lot of people don't want him to lose his hand, and then there's others that think it's very cool because obviously it happens in the comic. So in terms of what I see is actually going to be happening here, you know, I think it would be very, very cool if Rick Grimes did actually lose his hand by Major General Beale. I think that'd be really cool, just because obviously it's a comic thing, and just, you know, in order for that to happen, I think it would be really, again, just to make Major General Beale very menacing like that, I think would be amazing, right? Like, I think just doing something like that, it would be a really amazing comic Easter egg, because like the governor does that, right, in the comic. So I think to actually get something like that would be cool in a way to just, again, make Major General Beale more menacing, because the governor in the comic was insane. Like, the governor in the comic was just absolutely so brutal, and honestly a much more terrifying villain than he was on the show. And so I just feel like for Major General Beale, maybe you can kind of do that here, where you can make him more just menacing like that, make him more terrifying than the governor, right? And so just give him this storyline, right? And as much as I would want that, and maybe something like that does happen, it just doesn't seem like it's gonna happen. I think it really comes down to two situations. One, he cuts off Rick's hand, maybe as punishment for leaving, you know, because he did escape at the very end of the Walking Dead original series, where he left to try and make it home. And so maybe when he got captured and he came back, you know, punishment for that was losing his hand. Well, if you look at the shot right here of Rick Grimes, he actually does have his left hand right here. But if you notice, there's like this wire around it. He's sort of tied to, like, I don't know if it's a tree or something. I mean, obviously it's not going to be a tree, but it's something nearby he's actually tied to here. And he's forced to kill these walkers here. These walkers have, like, I don't know what that is. Lava? I mean, it's not lava, but they're on fire or something. Like, there's something going on here. And Rick is forced to kill them all here. And if you look, he actually does have his hand in this scene. But the thing about this though is, I mean, yeah, like, because his hand is specifically tied here in this scene, and you could tell that this is more of a flashback type of thing, like, this could be when he loses his hand. Maybe a walker just bites his hand, and it's really that simple. It could be a mix of the two. Like, maybe his hand gets bit or something, and then Beale is around, and so Major General Beale just like cuts off his hand kind of thing. And so maybe it's sort of a mix of the two. So in that sense, Beale saved his life. Like, I could see them doing something like that. But to me, I feel like the way it's going to happen is, it's possible Rick even cuts off his own hand, right? Like, it's very possible that it gets bit, and so he's just freaking out, and then he just like cuts off his own hand, because there is that one shot of him where he does have an axe, right? And obviously he has the axe where he's killing the walkers the entire time, but there's one specific shot where he's like on the ground and he's obviously yelling and all of that, and maybe in this scene he's actually about to lose his hand. Like, I don't know, maybe it's possible, but I do think that, you know, at this point there is confirmation that it is going to happen, because if you're actually looking around at like other shots in the trailer. Again, I talked about this in my trailer breakdown. I kind of went through a lot of this here, but you do see like a shot like this where it's hard to tell because there is some just like grass here in the way, but like you can tell he doesn't have his hand in this shot. There is other shots in the trailer where you do see him killing walkers, and he is specifically using his left arm just like to hold up that tool, and you could tell he doesn't have his hand there, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. There's that shot later on in the trailer where you do actually see him like throw the table or whatever, and he's only using his right hand to do that. Like he's not using his left hand at all because maybe he doesn't have his left hand, right? So he's just using his right hand to throw the table. So for me at this point, it just seems like it's probably going to happen. A lot of the shots of Rick when, it's more in the future and all that, you don't see anything of him with his left hand. Like you don't see any shots of it. It's like very, very hidden. So I think him losing his hand, I think it's going to happen in the first episode. I think it's going to be one of those things where you're just going to see a bunch of stuff happen. And I think episode 1 will end with Rick losing his hand. And it's just going to be a really crazy start to the entire series. Like that is just my prediction. And I think that's why we're seeing some of this stuff here. And I think that's how they can sort of get away from some of the spoilers, right? Because if a big moment like this happens in episode 4 or 5, right? Or episode 3 or something, like people are going to know right away. People are going to sense it. And so if it happens in the very first episode, in the very beginning of this series, yeah, I don't know. You just sort of get out of the way with that. And also it's a really big moment there. So now another aspect to this that I've been seeing though, is a lot of people don't like this idea. A lot of people seem to be very upset about it, just thinking that like if Rick does lose his hand, that's just it's very unfortunate and I don't want to see the character without his hand kind of thing. For me, honestly, I really love the idea. I think that it's borrowing, his story from the comic, because in the comic, that is just how I always saw Rick. Like I just always saw Rick as he never had his left hand, right? Like he just always had that prosthetic hand there. And so maybe, throughout this series, maybe he gets the prosthetic at some point. I think it would just be really cool. And imagine if there is a season 2, and what if he gets the prosthetic in that season, right? Like what if he gets one at the very end, like in the finale to season 1, and then that's sort of set up for season 2. It would just be so cool. It would honestly just be so cool. And they could literally make the one that he has in the comic. Like I think it would just be honestly a really cool moment for the character. I could see maybe if you've never read the comic, not liking that, like just not liking that story overall, just because maybe you don't relate with it as much, right? Like I totally get that. For me personally, I love the Walking Dead comic series, and doing something like that I think would just be really, really incredible. Like just to see the character in a position like that, because again, it's happening so much later. Like in the comic, it happens during the Governor arc, and it's like very early on in the Governor arc as well. For like most of the Walking Dead comic series, Rick doesn't have his hand at all. Like Rick just doesn't. And on The Walking Dead, he literally went through the entire series. And if you're looking at it timeline wise, it's practically literally the entire storyline of the comic that, he didn't lose his hand. So to me, I think it's totally fine. I honestly, like, I don't see an issue with it. I think story-wise, it also makes a lot of sense as well. At this point too, you want to sort of create a little bit more excitement with the character, do something different. And this is also like, it's different, but it's also, it happened in the comics. So you're just doing something like that. And I think it would be really cool because there's not a lot of moments anymore on The Walking Dead in general where you can sort of borrow from the comic anymore, right? Because obviously the original series is over. It finished that storyline. So if you can go back and just sort of borrow little moments here and there with those characters, I think that's just overall really, really cool. And that's kind of why I do want to see moments like this happen. And I think if episode 1 ends in this way, it's going to be really shocking. Like just in general, the scene's probably going to be crazy. And I think people are going to be like so hyped for episode 2 to see where this goes and just to see Rick Grimes in a situation like that. And if it does happen where he gets bit by a zombie or sorry, a walker, then again, it would just be crazy to see that scene, right? For Rick to be in a situation like that. So I don't have an issue with it at all, but I do understand if people do have an issue with it, if you've never really, read the comic and stuff like that, or maybe you just kind of have an issue with it overall. But for me personally, I really don't. And I'm excited. Honestly, I'm excited to see how he just sort of goes from, being, I guess, in a position where he just has to kill walkers all the time to becoming a Civic Republic soldier and also like an elite soldier, right? Like he's up there in ranking, like he's actually up there with Major General Beale's like elite group, right? So just like, what is he doing? What's his job in situations like that, right? Like you have a shot like this where you see Michonne smiling. Is it because she sees Rick and Rick is actually in a helicopter and maybe he's the one who's attacking this place right here? It'd be kind of crazy, but like, you never know. Like that's something that they could do there, right? Like he might be forced to do these things in order to stay alive or just, you know what I mean? Like he wants to try and escape. He's trying to figure out a way to sort of get out of all of this. And that's the one thing that I will say with Rick as well. Like I have questions on why is he, a Civic Republic soldier? Because he could choose to just not do anything. Or does he have the idea that if he does actually, do these things, that eventually maybe he could become the leader of this place, or maybe he'll have enough power that he can just leave and go back to Alexandria. I don't know if that's his thinking. Like, I don't know the whole thing here, but I would be really interested in knowing that. But anyways, yeah, I wanted to talk about this here, just sort of do a video on this. So post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.